We are committed to creating a safe and supportive space for our guests and listeners, and to provide information and tools that will help our listeners understand, manage, and overcome trauma. We understand that the healing journey can bring up challenging emotions. Therefore, we want to warn our audience that certain episodes may contain discussions or stories that could be triggering for some individuals. The content of the podcast is for educational and informative purposes only, and we encourage you to practice self-care and discretion while listening, and to reach out to a trusted support system or professional if you feel overwhelmed and need help on your healing journey.
With those insecurities and what you're talking about, even within the survival mode, like what's the role of letting go here?
Letting go of insecurities? Or
I don't know what exactly letting go. I just thought of
I
like,
think you know what I think this is key for me, and I hope this makes sense, and I hope it resonates for others. Is for me, just like with shame, changing my belief system about myself has changed my insecurities, and accepting some of my weaknesses, and just accepting the things that I used to beat myself up over. Oh, it's such a weakness, and just accepting those. But it really has a lot to do with your belief system that you have about yourself. And when you rebuild that and reframe that, a lot of the
yeah,
insecurities go away. Wouldn't you say that's true in your life? I can see the light bulb going off above your head. I can see
yeah,
it.
because I wrote some notes on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That the importance of honesty with yourself
Right.
and honesty in a sense of, let's say, what am I bad at? Let's think.
What can
Let's
I
boost my
admit to?
ego and say that I'm not bad at anything. Which actually, it's interesting place to be because I actually don't feel like I'm bad at anything. Which, by the way, it's not true. There's many things that I'm bad at, but I don't have a belief that I can't learn it.
Right. It's not something you can't
Um,
change.
but what am I bad at? Well, even like with, let's say, my Ironman prep, like I'm still pretty slow. Like yesterday, I did half marathon in 2 hours 59 minutes. And with that, before, first of all, I wouldn't be running later than 5:30 a.m. because I was so insecure about people seeing me running that now running half marathon, which by the way, like it's for people listening, if you might not know, that's a really slow pace, like really slow. Um, 3 hours is when they usually cut off the half
Mm.
marathon distance. That's like for the slowest people. Which by the way, I finished second to last my first half marathon. No shame in that. Um,
No.
and which by the way, some time ago I would be like, I'm not saying this to anybody because that means I'm not good. Like I
Right.
finished second to last, I must be bad. Um,
And you
so
clearly expect yourself to be better than that.
yeah, um, probably not. What is it? It's not necessarily. It probably is expectation, but I think it's more so because I. What I'm thinking here is that there's different kind of expectations. There's expectations that I have that are not coming from a place of like, if you don't meet this, I'm beating myself up. Um, and then there's expectations that I'm like, okay, it's not expectations, they're standards. Like I have
Oh,
standards.
okay. Right.
But like with running, good example is um, I'm actually bad at it. And some people might naturally want to be like, no, 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 you're not. I'm like, I'm actually bad. Like
I
the
get it.
distance that I did, most people they do it like 2 hours, and that's for them. That's like wasn't
Yeah.
good, and I'm like I'm dying at 3 hours. I can barely do it. So I know I'm bad at it. Am I actually bad, or it's in my mind? I don't know. But with where I am right now, I'm bad at it. But I don't feel shame about it. Um, it's more like it's a fact. It's the real life feedback of when I tried to run half marathon showed me, which by the way I have done at least well, 3 times in like competition and 2 times by myself, that the feedback showed that I can't get below 2 hours 50 minutes with where I am right now. So it means that I'm pretty slow, which means that I'm pretty bad at it. But at the same time, I don't make it mean anything about me
It's
other
not your
than,
identity.
yeah, with where I am right now, with where my body is at, and all this kind of stuff, I'm slow. It's just a fact. But it doesn't make me a failure.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make me slow because I'm actually slow. But it doesn't make me think any certain things about myself or make me feel less than, because even if I
Yeah.
think about it from different perspective, how many people even run those distances?
Right. Right. Right.
It's
See, like when
like,
you were saying, for those of you that don't know, a marathon is, 3 hours max. Like I didn't know that because guess what? I haven't ran a half marathon.
yeah, and it's something that, even like with that, I did have insecurities. This is actually a good example because I did have insecurities, but they weren't about the running itself. They were more about my body. And I have said this
Mm.
probably in several episodes about how I asked my friend after I finished my first half marathon. I would ask her like, there's like one thing that I don't understand, and she's like, what's that? And I'm like, nobody told me or asked me when I told them that I'm training for a half marathon if I'm too fat for it. Like I was literally expecting somebody to go like, aren't you too fat to do like half
Oh my
marathon?
gosh.
Nobody. Zero people asked me that. And in my mind I was like, okay, they probably are afraid to confront me or like call me out or you know. Um and the only feedback that I heard to people that I would talk about it is, one, I just thought you're gonna be busier. I'm like, huh?
Mm.
That's it? And the second one was, I would never be able to do that. That was the what happened in their mind as I said that.
Yeah.
But here I was being like, oh my gosh, if I tell them, they're gonna call me out. Like, how can I confront that? Let's talk ahead. How can I justify me being out of shape? you know?
Aw.
Um, and but like that was what's happening in my mind. So I
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily insecure about the speed because I feel like to some extent I have accepted that I'm not the fast person. I don't think
Right.
it's I don't think it's not changeable. Probably is if I would get like some trainer or somebody would help me, or let's say as I lose more weight, I can go faster and stuff like that. Which I probably will, but I don't see how I would be like really fast person
Yeah.
because I have never really been fast. The only thing here is the question whether it's actually belief that I'm feeding or I'm actually slow. So that one,
Right.
it's still kind of under question mark. Um,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like I wasn't insecure about the speed at which I'm going, which at some point I was. I literally didn't want people to see me running because I was thinking that I run the way I look, it looks stupid. It doesn't look like professional runner should look like, which by the way, when I was a kid, I had no idea what even that is. It's just
Mm-hmm.
something that I saw somebody run and I'm like, that looks professional. I don't run like that. I must suck.
Oh God.
Add on top of that a layer of me being slow,
Yeah.
which like in basketball camps when we would go running, I would finish pretty much like at the end. And even then at the end, other girls would still be running faster than me. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so now it wasn't in now like fast forward with this half marathon preparation, it wasn't as much the speed, it was more so what people gonna judge me about when it comes to the way I look or where my body is at. Which when I had conversation with them, which is not easy thing to do by the way because there's a lot of shame that needs to be overcome, but that's a good
Yeah.
example where as we face that shame and we overcome it, we can actually get that real life feedback or real time feedback on whether what I'm thinking is actually true. Because if I didn't have that
Yeah.
conversation, if I didn't bring it up, literally the whole time I probably still be like convinced that that's what people were thinking. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that's what they were thinking. And like with that, it's really, for me it's really interesting to think on how that is more so. And that's why I think even like you might even have something similar with certain situations where I would have shame before. I don't have shame, it's more so just a feedback on okay, maybe you're not good enough at it yet, at this thing. Not that you're not good enough, but your skill set or your knowledge or your experience, it's just not there yet to bring this specific result. So there's more learning. Like, that's what I get from that is, okay, there's more learning to do. There must be
Right.
something that I'm not seeing. There's something that I might have missed, but it doesn't make me as not good enough. It's just that with this moment with where I'm at in this snapshot, my skill set or my experience, it's just not at the level where I can get results that I would want to get.
Right.
That's all it is. But it doesn't make me less than. It's just that maybe at this specific thing, I'm not as good yet.
Right. 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 You're separating who you are and what your identity is from what you do
And question
and your
here
results.
for you would be, what helps to separate that? Because I don't think it's that, it's like, oh, makes sense. How you do that?
Well, I'll tell you, I wish somebody would have said that to me a long time ago, because to me it makes complete sense, when I think about that. Um, it's just like I talk about, we love our children, right? And those of us that have children, we don't always love what they do. And when they mess up, it does not change how we feel about them at all, right? We still love them no matter what. So how do you do it? So that's part of the whole building a relationship with yourself, and being able to separate that and understanding that. I used to be able to do, I learned to do that with others. I
Mhm.
learned a long time ago how to separate a person from what they do.
I like the way you said it in several episodes. Separate the who from the do.
Yeah, have separate the who from the do. Yeah, definitely. But it took me a long time to realize, oh, I should apply that to myself as well. Because the bottom line is,
Mm.
and we've talked about this online and offline, we have talked about building a relationship with yourself and how important that is, because that goes out and affects everything. It affects all your relationships. Um, and that's part of it. I mean, do you want to sit down with your best friend and just let them sit there and just beat themselves up verbally? Just sit there
Mm.
and there's one person in my life, I'm not going to say who. There's one person in my life who I admired a lot, and you wouldn't have known from the without knowing this person quite how insecure they were. And sometimes when we would talk, this person would go into such detail about what a horrible, just like how they can't do something, or something bad about this, to the point that I finally got to the point where I would ask them to stop saying that, because it was so incredibly uncomfortable to sit and listen to that. It was so hard to listen to that. But this person really, in their heart, believed everything they were saying, and it was awful stuff. And from my point of view, it wasn't true. From the
Yeah.
person, I knew this person really well, and I knew what this person was saying about themselves was not true. It was just their belief system. And so we don't want to sit there and have that conversation with the people that we love. We don't want them saying that stuff about themselves. It's the same thing within ourselves. We cannot do that to ourselves. And I still catch myself going down that road. I will automatically go there, and I have to catch it. And I shared a story the other day, see if I can remember real quick, about, the voice in my head. And this was, I just remember, I could literally tell you right where I was at too. I was walking out of the bathroom and into the hallway, and I don't remember what it was they said, but this was a really sharp, critical voice that was coming at me. And it was yelling at me. And it was saying something mean to me. I don't remember what it was. It doesn't matter. But but it got my attention. I stopped. I literally turned around. I literally physically turned around, because that's how loud the voice was. And I realized it was my mom's voice, and it was her critical voice coming at me. And I realized what was being said to me was so not true. But had I not caught myself at that moment and realized what I heard, and then go, wait a minute, and I challenged that thought that was coming to me and went, no, that's not true. It was really eye opening, because I know that still goes on. That goes on with us, right? But being aware of that, and realizing I cannot treat myself like that. Like you wouldn't sit down and berate your best friend. You would, or someone you love. I mean, I wouldn't even berate someone I don't particularly care for. I won't do that. So why are we doing that to ourselves? Why is that okay? Why are we giving ourselves permission?
Because that's all we know.
Correct. Exactly. Especially those of us that were raised that way. That was my norm. That was my norm, is to constantly be, and oh gosh, if somebody did say something nice to me, oh, I would cling on to that. I want to hear more. I want to hear more. I would cling on to that.
Yeah, and I was even like thinking, how do you distinguish which voice is real and which not? When, well, one thing is that like the environment in which we're living,
Yeah.
it's not super friendly for us to have kind of good or objective views on ourselves, because we're like, it's so, I don't even, I'm curious at what point we start to get judgmental, because I think even like with some
Mm-hmm.
like success or beauty or whatever standards we see online, it's not like somebody's pointing finger at you and being like, if you're not this, then you're not good
Right.
enough. It's like, at
Right.
what point do we get to that realization that, oh, if I'm not this, then I'm not good enough?
Right.
And like it's
Well, in an abusive world, that's our world. That's our world. We're
hmm,
constantly told that we're not this. I mean, I talk about it in the podcast that I've had a mindset. I'm literally still working on changing it. I've come a long way, but I'm still working on it. That I should have known. I should have known, because that was said to me like, well, you should have known. You should have known. And at the moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're right. How could I not know that? Oh my gosh, how stupid of me. And I would just go down this road. But when I think back on it, it's like, here's an example. I don't know if I've shared this story or not. So when I was in 8th grade, I found a pair of high heels I really wanted. I'd never owned a pair of high heels. And my mom said, okay, I'll let you get them, but you have to earn them. So I had to earn them. I had to do extra chores. She gave me extra chores, and I did my extra chores, and I bought these. And when I look back on them now, I guess they were very ugly. Then I loved them. And I was beyond excited that I got these heels. I worked for them, and I got them, and I wanted them really bad. And so I really earned them. And I remember going in my room and putting them on, and I was going to show my mom and my dad the shoes. I was so excited. And I walked out, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "You don't even know how to walk in heels." And my first thought was, I didn't know that there was a way to walk in heels. Now I know there is, right? But then I didn't know. And instead of asking her, "Oh, mom, show me how," I was so humiliated by it and went down that whole road. Oh, I should have known that. How did I not know that? How did I not know that there's a way that you walk in heels? Of course there is. I don't know what that is, but I should have known that. So that was a theme in my life. And you can imagine how that fed my insecurities, right? Well, I should have known that. I should have known that. I was supposed to know everything. I expected, and this is me, because of the perception that I pulled in, that I came to the conclusion that I'm supposed to know everything. I am not supposed to come to you and say, I don't know, let me find out. I'm supposed to know everything.
yeah, and it's something that I wrote down, that thought that might um, cause, or as I reflect on some of my experiences, might have caused the insecurities, is that I did something wrong or I didn't do the right thing. And through
Right, right.
that, or even, yeah, like in your case with that example, the good one is that, yeah, you should have known instantly is like insecurity. It's like a,
Totally. Oh yeah.
um,
And let's add that to the another thing I didn't know that I should have known, right? So what does that do to my insecurities? Oh, that's just another thing I should have known. Dang
oh,
it. How could I not know that? And it
I think
becomes a very fearful place.
I have an idea. What
Hmm.
if that cause is other people's judgment? So
Well,
whatever others
yeah,
have judged you on, which is like
yeah,
you should have known, that
yeah,
instantly becomes insecurity.
yeah.
So it's like that judgment opens up or unlocks that shame, and that shame is like, okay, here's insecurity folder. We add this into this
Right.
folder, and it's now an
And
insecurity.
because remember, insecurities are a belief, right? We've kind of come to
Yeah,
that
yeah,
idea that
yeah.
it's a belief. So my belief right then was I should have known. So all the security, so you
Yeah.
can imagine, and this is really good. This is really good because I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God,
Same.
because there were so many places in my life where that was a thought that constantly came up. I should have known. I should have known. So yeah, I probably was the most insecure person this guy had ever seen. Just on that alone, just on that
And
belief system alone.
like I'm sitting here thinking that insecurities that I can identify within myself that I would have initially, a lot of them, if not all of them, came from somebody judging me for something or commenting
Right,
or something that made
right.
me feel judged. And then what happens down the line, I become the judger.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Exactly. That's where it flips. There's a point in time where it flips to that. When you get enough evidence in your feeble little mind that that's true, then it flips into a full on belief.
I have another question for you.
Hmm.
Speaking on parenting and kids, what you mentioned about separate who from the do. What would be the ideal um, wait, let me think. I have to translate. Um, which age would be the most critical for parents to start to think about what they kind of put in their kids to avoid, or at least not create some insecurities within them? You probably can
It
answer
really,
better as a parent.
yeah. And I just say from the minute they're born, literally, because that's what our job is as parents is to teach them. And you're not going to get it perfect. You're not going to get it right. You're going to do things that are wrong. But teaching your child to be secure within themselves is so important.
Mm.
That's why we teach them how to self-regulate and to self-soothe, right? It's all to keep them in balance. And so we need to teach them, and that stuff will make them secure. Teaching them that stuff is going to make them feel secure. And so that's our job as parents is to teach them how to be secure within themselves, and to teach them that you're still going to have insecurities, and that's okay. It's not your identity, right? I mean, I honestly, I wish I had this knowledge when I had my son when he was born. He reminds me there's a lot of things I did right, even though they feel like there's a lot of things I did wrong. But it's like, he's got such a great opportunity. He's got a little one, he's 2, and he's got another one on the way, and he's got such a great opportunity. And so this gives me opportunities to share with him. And what I love is that he listens. He listens. And so I really believe that
Which
it
is a good
starts from the
feedback
very,
on your parenting.
yeah, it truly does. It does. And I tell you, I think that it really starts from the beginning of how you can teach your child. And this is what it is. It's not your job to make them feel secure. Your job is to teach them to feel secure within themselves.
What's the difference?
Well, the difference is, I mean, if it takes me to say stuff to you to make you feel secure, what happens when I'm not around anymore?
Hmm.
Your security blanket is gone, right? So teaching them to be secure within themselves, like self-regulating their emotions, and that. I mean, I talk about my one daughter-in-law, Danelle. The thing that I love is that is the thing that she's good at a lot of things as far as a mother goes. But one of the things that I really love that she does with her kids is she does teach them to self-regulate and have a voice and to talk to them and walk them through stuff and teaching them as she's walking them through. She doesn't just they do something wrong and she just punishes them. She sits down and talks it through. Sometimes there's still going to be consequences, but she talks them through. She's teaching them how to self-regulate and how to work through this problem so that they feel secure within themselves, so they know as they get older that I'm going to be able to work through this. My mom taught me to, and now next time a problem comes, I know that there's steps I need to take to work through it, that I'm not having somebody else always make me feel secure, and now I'm in this situation and they're not around. What do I do? That's the way
Mm.
I think a lot of parents I've seen raise their kids is they mean well. They mean well, but our job is to make them feel, teach them how to be secure within themselves.
Okay, so within that, actually, another question would be for parents themselves. Do you have any advice for them regulating themselves? Because that's also going to play a big role in
Yeah.
their ability to be there for their kids. And I feel like big part of it, and I'm just speculating here, I'm not a parent, but like big part of it could be the patience. And
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
patience, big part is your self-regulation as a parent, because
Yeah.
if at any moment something can not trigger, probably also trigger, but like you either snap into some emotion or something, and you naturally want to either like, I don't want to say discipline because that's not the right word for it, um but like kind of teach them the lesson or communicate it in a way that might feel a bit judgmental. And
Yeah.
there can be really slight difference, but they can perceive it as I did something wrong, something's wrong with me, and kind of go into that insecurity route. And like with that, because I feel a lot of times, at least that's what I have heard, that our kids are kind of the mirrors of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And like with that, even like what would be, like we figured out the age, which is like super early, as early as you can.
Mm-hmm.
But then like what would be something that parents also can do for their self-regulation? Because I feel
Mm-hmm.
also as they learn that for themselves, it's easier or it becomes more natural to teach that to their kids as
Right.
well.
Right. You're right, because you can't teach something you don't know. And I was a parent who didn't self-regulate. That is the
How does
mistake
that
that I
look like?
made. Ugh. It looks like I'm well. Here's the thing. I was
Put you on the
careful. Here's
spot
the
there. It's like,
difference.
ugh.
I know. So this is what's true. So I was fully aware that I had childhood abuse, and I was fully aware that I didn't want to abuse my son or my children that I'm going to have. And so I was really always careful. I'm not saying I was perfect, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember being very careful about how I interacted with Corey and how I corrected him. But I didn't in my marriage. And so what
Mm.
he grew up in was, although I self regulated for him, I didn't self regulate when it came to getting triggered in my marriage. And so he was raised in, although he was raised in a home where there was yelling and ups and downs with the emotions. So he got to witness that. But what I was careful is I didn't do it towards him.
Mm.
So when I think back on that, I'm thinking, oh, I didn't raise him. There was no trauma there. Yes, there was. Because although it wasn't directed at him, he was raised in a home where that was there and evident. And so it did affect him. And so I would tell parents, first of all, your kids are always watching you. They are the mirror. They are always learning from you, good and bad, right? And for your own sake, first of all, learn to self-regulate. Learn how to manage your emotions and your feelings and what's driving them, and to manage your triggers. We can all get there. And so I would say, like I said earlier, you can't give something away that you don't have yourself. And so learn how to regulate, and put that example not just towards your kids, but everybody around you, so that they're seeing a consistency, because he saw inconsistency. Because he saw inconsistency with my ex-husband, but he saw that, like with my friends, I could regulate my emotions, and I could regulate my emotions with him. But when it came to my ex-husband and maybe a couple other people, I didn't regulate my emotions. So he saw this inconsistency. So
and, and like follow up here with you taking that ownership and realizing that, oh, like it there was like two sides that he kind of experienced. How you deal with emotions that come up as you realize that, because it's not something
mm,
that you can now fix or go back and be like, okay, let's round two, let's try it again.
I
And the
know.
fact is, and like the experience has already happened for the kid. So with that, I feel like there's a lot that parents also deal with when it comes to, even like, let's say if they see that their kid has developed some kind of insecurity, it can be so easy to now go and beat yourself up for it,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
or deal
yeah,
with some
trust
regret
me.
that might come with some mistakes that are made.
Yeah, and my answer to that is when you mess up with your kids, you always go to them and you always fix it. You always correct it. You always own it. Is you can't always correct it, but you need to own it. You need to own it. There's something about that when you truly authentically own your shit. There's it just it can break any kind of resentment or bitterness or anger. It can really break that. And so I did that with Corey all along. When I would mess up, when I recognized that I would mess up, I was always, honey, I'm sorry I messed up. Well, it was a few years ago that I realized this. I realized, I was so proud of myself. I didn't raise my son in an abusive home and I protected him from others, and I did, but he was raised in a home of strife. And so when I realized that, and I realized that absolutely had an effect on him and things make sense, I went to him and I apologized. I told him, I realized, you were raised in a home that there was a lot of yelling and fighting and strife. And, and my son is such a sweetheart. And of course he wanted to reach out and comfort me because of course I'm in tears telling him this and, such a sweet, but I told him, I said, no, this is about you. This is about, I got to own this. And I'm crying because there's grief here, but I'm going to be okay, but I have to own this. And so that's what I recommend to parents is always be real with your kids. Just keep in mind your job as a parent is to teach them on the ways that they should go. And and you want your child to be able to have that freedom of authenticity. And so you need to teach it to them. Because you know, I still think about it and I still kind of get the ugh, but it doesn't have that grip on me anymore like it did. And I don't know what it did for Corey. And even if he shared it with me, I don't think I would share it on the podcast per se, unless I had his permission. But, I'm sure that it had an effect on him, you know. And so that's what I would say is just always be authentic with your kids. Your kids are watching everything you do. Even when you think they aren't watching, they're listening.
Mm,
They are.
yeah. And another interesting question that I got was about what can cause more insecurities, parents or peers?
Ooh. I think that, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, I think it's the parents because that's your foundation. That's your first foundation of who you are, and they're helping to develop that. So I think that the parents, you know, peers sometimes come later, usually, or their effect will come kind of later. But parents affect you from the minute you're born, right? They have an effect on you. I think peers can add to that. If you've already got insecurities and you go into school or whatever, they're gonna add to your insecurities for sure. School is not fun.
Yeah, and I think it depends also on, let's say, if peers are your first real sense of connection that you get,
Yeah.
then that can
Well,
have,
outside of your parents, yeah.
yeah, because sometimes, let's say, even like with talking on, again, reflecting back to Tim Fletcher about the neglect.
Yeah.
So if the kid might have grown up with a lot of neglect from their parents, which doesn't mean that it was intentional, maybe parents were busy or,
Right.
just
Right.
literally trying to keep the lights on,
Right.
then there might be their first point of real sense of connection might be their peers.
Right.
And that's where there could be like a lot of effects there. And I feel like
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. It really depends on the situation and what's the relationship with peers, what kind of peers, and also what kind of parents. I feel like I'm saying peers as a fruit. But like I feel like it really depends on the situation, because in my case, it's actually hard to decide. They both played a role, probably. Again, not intentionally. Yeah, like with peers, it's also that they don't really know what they're doing because they're still growing up themselves. That's also another
they're kind
thing.
of equals
Yeah.
to you. Yeah. So they say stuff
Yeah.
and do things that,
Which can be true with some parents as well.
oh yeah.
But
Yes.
but
Yes.
naturally we would assume that parents are a little more grown up, a bit more life
Supposed
experiences,
to
or a
be.
bit more, yep, able to have better decision making or being able to make like certain judgments.
Well,
So with that,
I think a lot of kids too think that too. They think, oh, well, they're parent, they're adults, so they have their act together. And I even had that conversation with Corey when he was probably about 8
I
years
was
old.
hoping you would bring this up.
Yeah, this is really interesting because I remember thinking as a kid, oh, when you become an adult, you have it all together. Like you don't lie, you know all the answers, that you got it together. Like that's what adults look like. And I think a lot of that was my upbringing too, of being told that adults are never wrong, and you always have to listen to adults, and you don't sass back, and you don't all that. But I remember being in the car, and I don't remember what the conversation was I was having with Corey, and he was about 8 years old, and my dad was in the car too. And it dawned on me that the way the conversation was going, that Corey thought the same thing, that he thought the same thing, that when you become adults, that you got it all together. And I remember turning to him and saying, honey, adults make mistakes too. And he just kind of sat back. I remember him being, what? And I said, yeah, adults make mistakes. I make mistakes. And when I make mistakes, I tell you when I make mistakes. And he was just like, and then my dad piped up and he said, yeah, I make mistakes too. And I remember him almost like sitting back, almost a little aghast, like, wow, like there was this big realization to him that, wow, adults aren't perfect. And I think that a lot of kids think that. And I think that's why we need to be very authentic with them. Because then I became an adult and I was this hot mess. What happened? I grew up thinking I was supposed to arrive, and instead I'm a hot mess.
Which can cause even more insecurities and beating
Right,
yourself up.
right. And
Because
who am I
something
going to
must be
say that
wrong
to?
with you if you're not perfect.
Right, right. I'm that weird adult that, is a hot mess, and everybody else has their
Yeah.
act together. And, and anytime anything would go wrong, well, it was my fault because I was the hot mess.
And you
Like
were
I'm
supposed to
sitting here
know.
I'm telling you like that my mindset is just crazy.
And
And
you know what's the
and
best thing? It's actually not crazy. We all have it.
I
To
know,
some extent.
seriously. Seriously, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm sharing it, because I remember seeing Corey's face and being so shocked. And it took me back to when, I was a kid thinking that. Of course, I never had anybody tell me that adults make mistakes. So I just carried that in. But for him, it was just like a whoa. It was a big wow moment for him. I don't know if he remembers that. He probably doesn't remember that conversation. I'll have to ask him, but
and
it
I
was
and I
huge.
think even like with that example, you showed him that he doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
Because
That's
if
not my
we
expectation at all. Yeah.
yeah, because if we as kids see our parents, it's literally exactly the same with social media. If our parents try to show their like, I'm not telling that they now have to be messes all over, but if they can own their shit and they can tell you that, you know what, I made a mistake, and even like apologize or like have a conversation about it, then I feel like in a kid's mind it is that realization that, wait, mistakes are allowed, they're okay, it's
Right.
something that
Right.
happens, it's something that happens to you. As my parent who I look up to, that's literally my role model, it's like
Right.
we don't really see our role models growing up telling that, oh, here's a list of mistakes that I made today,
Right. Right. Like, yeah. I
and I
mean,
own
yeah.
it, it's
Yeah.
okay, I own it.
It's also not shown, if you think about it, it's also not shown in, because I'm just thinking, it's funny you said that, because I'm thinking, oh, like our superheroes, they never make a mistake, and that's a big thing now is, all these movies that are with superheroes and stuff, like they don't make mistakes. Like there is that perception for kids that, yeah, when you become an adult, you arrive, you don't make mistakes, you're perfect. And the pressure that's on you when you end up being a hot mess like I was, and I wasn't perfect. That's pretty bad.
And as long as you
Yeah,
make mistakes, you're not there yet. That's actually the thought
right.
process.
Oh, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's interesting. This has really been a good conversation. It's really made me think and understand a lot
Yeah, me
more
too.
about my insecurities and why I had them. And
Yep, same.
well, duh, of course I did. You know?
Yeah. One thing that I want to add for like more practical piece is because as we were thinking or like talking, I was thinking on some people listening. What if they're thinking even like, how do I identify my insecurities? Like because like that's a big piece to even identify them. Because then if we don't know what is it that we want to address, like how do you address it? It's like, oh, I feel insecure. Okay, like what exactly specifically you feel insecure about? And one thing that you can do is you
Yeah.
can literally think on, even like with shame, some people might not fully, and I feel like it's really um like a lot of men can go through that as well because men haven't been taught to feel or understand their emotions.
Yeah.
um but even
Yeah.
like women as well, even like shame is one thing to think about it, but also you can think on like what is it that I'm trying to avoid,
Yeah.
like what is it that I'm
Yeah.
trying
Because
to avoid.
it's
And
a listening to your body, right? And pay attention to your thoughts because you're going to have them both. You're going to feel something in your body and you're going to have thoughts that are going through. And that's
yeah,
and you say it so well though. That's where you challenge it. You challenge that. Why am I feeling like that?
yeah, and you want to challenge it through, and that's actually what I have learned about confidence is, and it might sound boring, which it might be, but it works. um, Consistency is a big thing there. So if you
Yeah.
identify something that you try to avoid or you don't want to do or you feel ashamed of, start slowly to challenge it through some of the actions. It doesn't have to be big. Like it's something that I keep telling all the time that you can have just as much change, if not more, actually more, because consistency beats intensity. Um,
Yeah.
if you just do something small for like, consistently, because then what happens is that that now can become your normal if you do it long enough and consistent enough. The piece is long enough and consistent enough. Really, both of them are the
Mm-hmm.
key pieces here. And then as you do that, even though initially it might feel uncomfortable, like for example, my 75 hard, like there was a time which feels so long ago that I would struggle with 75 hard.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like it's just another day. I have to do two workouts. I
Yeah.
have to do this. I have to do that. And it's something that I was thinking about. There was a day that I would literally struggle. I would really struggle to even do the first workout. And then I'm like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, I have to do another one. And then I have another 70 something days of doing this. Um, Now it's like, is there like something else I can do on top of it to make it more fun? So even like with that, it's something that like I want you to trust the process, and even if it does seem like 75 hard might be like a bit like big example, but there was a time that I would struggle even like to go for a walk every day,
Mm-hmm.
where I would just be
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't feel like it today, so I won't go.
Yeah.
um
You didn't wake
but
up one morning and you're able to do 75 hard. That didn't
yeah,
just you just
exactly,
didn't
it
wake
was
up
years
day.
until
One
I
day
got
you
to
do
that place.
and one day you could. It was a process. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
was. And another thing with confidence, which is kind of the opposite of insecurities, is the, I don't want to say easiest, simplest way to build your confidence is to keep promises to yourself. If you say you're
Yeah.
gonna do something, then go and do it. And I don't mean again huge promises. It can be small, tiny promises
Yeah.
that you make to yourself every day. That you keep those promises to yourself, and the more you do
Mm-hmm.
that, the more you will see that you start to trust yourself. Like anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
if they would tell you like every day I'm gonna make you a smoothie, and they do that, how much more are you
Yeah.
gonna trust them?
You're gonna have confidence that tomorrow they're gonna do that again, and you can trust them. Yes.
Yeah, and it's the
That's
same
a
with
really
yourself.
good point.
Yeah. So that's my piece of like the practical things that you can start
Yeah.
doing, because it doesn't have to. I feel like we think that there's this like, and I was thinking that as well. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm such a mess. I don't believe in myself, and I have so many insecurities. Like, where is the magic pill? I can't find it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was obsessed with self development. I would watch all the videos, read all the books, and I'm like, I don't see the magic pill. And it's literally right in front of you. Small, tiny baby steps over a consistent
Yeah.
amount of time. Keep promises to yourself. Doesn't have to be big, but as you're gonna do that, you will be amazed how much can change in relatively short amount of time with you staying consistent.
Yeah. And I would
You
say
might
to the
surprise yourself.
listeners, excuse me, I would say to the listeners too is start paying attention to what's going on in your mind and start paying attention to what's going on in your body and start looking at it in curiosity and not judgment and try to figure out so if something comes up and you're feeling an insecurity, start questioning yourself. What is it? Why am I feeling that way? What's going on? And try to get to the root of it. Because once you get to the root of it and you understand, a lot of times that's going to take care of that insecurity. Or if that insecurity rises up again, you're going, oh, no, 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 no. I know where that comes from. And it's not going to have that grip on you anymore. And it's a
don't beat
process.
yourself up if you don't get to the root.
Right. Just
try.
understand, even if you just get to the point at the moment that I understand I'm feeling insecure, I don't like the way I feel, and try to do something that will distract you from it, right? Because for me, and I don't know if this is for everybody, but for me, I tend to be an overthinker. And if a thought comes in my mind, I will soon catch myself meditating on it. And then everything that comes with it, the emotions, the feelings, and not feeling good about
do
myself.
Something. Listen to my grandma. Do something.
Yeah.
Take some action.
Go for a walk. I mean, just even, do something. Keep yourself busy. Keeps you, it's true. If you stay busy, you're going to stay out of trouble. It's true.
Yeah. And it's also like, and this is something that I said to somebody just before this. It's not about doing to avoid or to run away.
Right.
But as you do, you will naturally have something to focus on instead of focusing on all this that is happening in your mind. And as you focus on something and you get something done, whatever, it doesn't have to be like this like huge thing that you're now doing. It can be something small, planting a flower or something. But as you get it done, you now have in front of you something that you did that you can feel good about, something that you have done. And then you have another thing that you get done and you're like, oh, I did this as well. And by the end of the day, you're like, oh, I did like 3-5 things. And it makes you feel good instead of imagine now you sit and you feel bad about yourself and you're just like sitting in those thoughts and you feel even worse. And there's no movement, nothing in your body, nothing, anything that you do or in your mind with like being focused on something other than those thoughts. Naturally, it will just keep feeding that insecurity. It is for me, it was like, it was such a simple thought that my grandma shared that I was like, that's it.
Yeah, so profound.
Yeah, so powerful.
Yeah, this has been great.
Yes, love this topic. Oh, and also like for future episodes, feel free to ask any questions or any topics that you would want us to cover, because even some people that I had conversations with before this, I'm actually so glad that I asked some of the people and I posted a story about it as well, because that gave a lot more ideas on like what we could talk about that I know that some people want to hear about or they want to learn more about. And it gives me also more like probably for you it's the same, where like it's like, okay, let's dig into it. Let's look for like some of the things that worked for us within these things, or we know somebody who might have like found some solutions within that realm. And then it becomes more fun because we know that you listening can benefit from that because you literally just asked us about those topics. So,
and we always end up learning so much about ourselves when we do these, seriously. I mean, I had aha moments as I was sitting here sharing, I'm like, oh, that's why I thought that way. Oh, that's why I did that. Like, it makes so much sense. It's so funny.
Exactly the same for me. Yeah.
So, well, thank you.
Thank you.